We all know that Old Town is a source of pride for Fort Collins. It's also a huge economic asset. How it became such an asset is the story of historic preservation in Old Town. You're about to see a quick tour of how the historic preservation efforts in Old Town transformed a deteriorating liability into a world-class economic asset as well as a source of pride for our community. This presentation explains the Old Town redevelopment, which occurred over 20 years from 1980 to 2000. This transformation occurred over a long period of time, and we take for granted how we got to here from there. This is College Avenue at the turn of the century. It was a vibrant community. Linden Street in 1907 was the city's center. Today, Old Town is an attractive, economically viable part of Fort Collins that reveals the success of preservation only possible with public support. Old Town has not always looked as good as it does now on Linden Street, nor been as popular a place for business. How did we get to this from this? The movement towards preserving Old Town began in the late 1970s. Old Town had become a pretty shabby place. An ill-conceived plan to build a one-way couplet street right through the middle of the triangle and its buildings galvanized the city, business owners, and residents of the area to band together to save this special place that was Old Town. The area was designated as a local landmark and National Register Historic District, but restoration was just to begin. A major stumbling block is that it is often more expensive to preserve a building than to just tear it down and rebuild anew. The city bridged this gap in the cost of preservation through the financial incentives listed here. Each of the renovations you are about to see used one or more of these incentives. Some early projects led the way. Built in the late 19th century, this was the city's first firehouse and town hall until the mid-20th century. The facade was then modernized and covered up with a metal front. This is the completed project. The bell tower in the center was reconstructed, as were cornices, storefronts, doorways, etc. The Kissock Block, built in 1889, was a high-style Victorian building. The Kissock Block lost all of its Victorian detail due to one of those facade remodelings that was touted as modernization after World War II. This is the Kissock Block today, after reconstruction from historic photos. The concept behind the Old Town project was to restore the historic buildings as jewels, while the empty lots would be infilled with architecturally compatible new buildings. Notice the visible setback to the right. It further distinguishes the new infill buildings from the adjoining historic ones. The two brightly colored buildings are the Hohnstein and Howard blocks. Here they are after restoration. When the Old Town project was done, the historic buildings leased first before the new infill buildings. This is the McPherson Block before restoration and after. The restored interior of this building has commanded the highest rent for gold suites in downtown. Here is the Forrester Seckner Block before and after. With the renovation of Old Town, the city developed guidelines for the Landmark Preservation Commission to use to maintain the historic character of the area when exterior changes are proposed in the district. They have worked very well since 1981. There have been some large spin-off projects from the Old Town rejuvenation. These include the Opera House, which was built in 1881 as the Central Block, and by the mid-1980s had fallen into disrepair inside and out. In 1989, a $9 million renovation created Opera Galleria, which included adjoining historic buildings. The Linden Hotel was a large signature building completed in 1883. By 1984, it was vacant, neglected, and condemned. Holes in the roof leaked water and pigeons roosted inside. Transients had started fires to keep warm. The exterior was restored in 1995, and each floor of the three-story building was sold as a commercial condominium. The National Trust for Historic Preservation reports that every dollar a community spends on revitalization draws $30 in new private investment. A companion renovation project was the adjoining Loomis Block. Exploratory investigation revealed the cast iron columns of the storefronts had been covered up. This is the Loomis Block after rehabilitation. Notice the restored storefronts and the reconstructed cornices. This is the old auto parts store. It was rehabilitated in 1994 to its historic appearance. The 1880s Windsor Hotel is the blonde brick building in the center of the picture, but all the historic facade was gone due to a 1950s remodeling. A new owner reconstructed the facade from historic photos. The Trimble block on the left was built about 1905. The Trimble billiard parlor on the right was built about 1880. The Trimble buildings were remodeled in the 1950s after World War II. The cornices were removed, a stucco finish studded with pink stones was applied over both the upper facades, and the first floor storefronts were replaced with modern aluminum storefronts. The Barkley block to the far left fared even worse, with an unfinished wood and black steel vertical slip covering. In 1998, all three buildings were brought back to their historic appearance. This is the C.C. Forrester block before and after a 1998 rehabilitation. Good historic photos were not available, so simplified contemporary storefronts were built. The Silver Grill Cafe occupies 5 small individual storefronts that are tied together in the interiors. Individual facades have been restored as they each were historically. Paint color, awnings, and signage treatments tie the one business together. The Northern Hotel actually started in 1887 as a wooden Victorian hotel at another location. The building was moved, given a brick facade, and enlarged in 1905. Art Deco architectural elements of terracotta, stucco, and black Carrara glass were added in the 1930s in a major remodeling. The Northern burned in 1977, and the top 2 floors of the Walnut Street side were condemned. The first floor storefronts were inappropriately remodeled in the 1970s. The Northern Hotel was restored by a public-private partnership during the period 1999 to 2001. This extremely successful project revitalized the historic hotel and added low to moderate cost senior housing to our downtown area. What has this all meant to the Fort Collins economy? Some stores in the downtown area produce some of the highest net taxable sales per square foot in the city. Whereas the city has doubled in land area, Old Town has kept pace in sales tax revenue without adding additional land. Preservation has brought traffic and interest to downtown and has been so successful the name Old Town has been adopted by all the surrounding neighborhoods. Downtown is consistently voted by citizens as the best place in Fort Collins to take visitors. The city is known in large part by the Old Town area because of an ambience that is directly attributable to historic preservation.